Stratzel is the CEO of Whitebox. They do some amazing thing in fulfillment for DTC, and we're going to jumping into a bunch of topics. But Marcus, if you can take us right from the front, from the day you were born to how'd you get started in Whitebox, a quick background of about who you are, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Shekar and Gary. Thank you very much. Thank you for welcoming me to the Retail Perch. I won't start the day I was born, but I'll go far enough back. So I am a former naval officer. I spent 5 years in the submarine service, and so my background is one of nuclear engineering and submarine operations, and I use very little of any of that knowledge today, but it was sort of an amazing background, and from there really got into the startup technology space back in early 2002 when I joined advertising.com, which was an interactive advertising company, and really it was my first introduction to the brands, the challenges of those brands with the new changing like digital landscape. And I've gone through multiple different iterations of startup companies and had a lot of experience along the way, mostly in the advertising technology space, from performance advertising to search advertising to mobile advertising, and then programmatic technological advertising. And now I'm in the e-commerce space. And so today I'm the CEO of Whitebox. I joined just over 2 years ago. We're an amazing company, and again, we're helping brands sell more stuff across all channels that we can help them, support them, as well as also being able to do direct to consumer and other types of fulfillment on their behalf. And so we sit at a really interesting perch to see how the consumer habits are changing, how, especially in the past 18 months, how in-store has really changed as a focus for some folks, and hopefully coming out of COVID and more in-store shopping, what that looks like going ahead. And so I'm really interested in having a great conversation here today. And so that's me in a nutshell.
Terrific. Marcus, it might be helpful for our listeners if you would describe some of the different product categories you work in.
You mean our customers that we serve?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, sure. So I think the categories that we serve are a good mirror of actually the types of things that people are buying through e-commerce. And especially where a lot of investment is going into some great challenger brands with different categories. And so the CPG space for sure is a big part of our business. And then food and beverage is a subcategory in that, where we do a lot. And so we are probably most experience in beverage and beverage e-commerce, which is an interesting challenge because liquids weigh a lot, and so you've got dense, heavy boxes that you've got to be able to get there efficiently to consumers without breakage or spillage and those sorts of things, and also merchandising them online, differentiation, creating variety packs. So those are the categories where we have a lot of experience. But honestly, we've sold everything from full-size gazebos and grills and outdoor equipment to cement pavers, templates, to bird food, to everything. There's a lot of really diverse products, but I would say the one place that we're really strong in is food and beverage.
Neat.
A little history of Whitebox as a company. I mean, what's the evolution? I mean, did you guys always start off with this as a vision, or?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. So Rob Ray and Sean Clark, the two of our founders, started the company, and even before Whitebox, they were operating a different company, which was an early e-commerce company that sold audio and accessory equipment for cars. And so they were essentially going out and sourcing the products and then reselling them online on Amazon, eBay, and others. And so over that process, they built a bunch of great technology to allow them to be more efficient, to drive more sales in their business. And they realized very quickly, if we can help ourselves, we can probably help other folks do that. And so Whitebox was born. We're a very large seller on Amazon. We have a lot of expertise in how to navigate that complex channel. We bolted on, a bunch of different services around that, and most notably is our high volume, low defect fulfillment network is a really powerful solution for brands today. But in general, the company really started as how do we help brands from factory floor to front door, which is our tagline today. From the moment the product is ready to sell, how do we help them get it to market it, sell it, and then even fulfill it to the customers? And so it really started as as a necessity to build the technology that today is the backbone of our solutions.
Terrific. So let's say I have a brand. Let's say I make some amazing ketchup, okay? And I want to find a market for it and obviously sell it. How does Whitebox help in that process? Because I see on your website that you're also helping brands, who want to go DTC, direct to consumer, whether it's through your marketplace or through Amazon, right?
Yeah, for sure. And so if you produce that bottle of ketchup, you've got a lot of things that you need to do to take it to market, and you've got a lot of choices as a business that you need to make first. Choice number one: do I want to start in store or do I want to start online? And every brand makes a little different decision there based on what kind of distribution deals they can get early, who they might know, where their expertise might be. And so if you came to Whitebox today, we would be able to store all of your ketchup in our warehouses. We would be able to activate and get your ketchup listed and selling on Amazon, Walmart, and in other places. And then we would be able to do all of your direct consumer and some wholesale B2B fulfillment on your behalf. But today, that bottle of ketchup is coming to us today for our bread and butter services of helping them sell more on Amazon and compete, and helping them do direct to consumer fulfillment, both on Amazon from their owned and operated store, and then the other outlets they may work with, maybe drop ship or otherwise. And so
Got
that's
it.
what we're doing for that.
So if I had my ketchup and I set up a Shopify store, I could tie the fulfillment end into the Whitebox service. So when people order off, the fulfillment is happening through Whitebox. Do I get that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Perfect. That's amazing, because I think it opens up the playing field for a lot of little brands that are trying to get to market and reach customers and get listed. And so you're basically helping them navigate the space of getting into these marketplaces, whether it's Walmart or Amazon, and a direct to consumer business, right?
That's correct. And there are a lot of choices along the way and a lot of decisions. And some of the easiest ones, and you use Shopify or a big commerce site as an example, where you've got a set of products, you've got a set of sellable SKUs as we think about them. You've got a bottle of ketchup. Do you also make mustard? Do you sell that ketchup and mustard together? A lot of these choices have ramifications and costs around fulfillment and packaging. And so I think we really work with our brands and consult them on things like box size, packaging, SKU selection, how they can better market. And because we are both selling things on behalf of our brands and doing the fulfillment, we come from a very unique point of view. And so we may be able to learn on Amazon without ever having to really create a kit or a pack. Like today, if you were a ketchup manufacturer and you wanted to do a deal with a Sam's Club or a Kroger or a Safeway to sell a ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, and relish pack in their store, you'd have to go through the process of making thousands of those packs, designing, getting them into the store, and then, quite frankly, hoping they sell. Now, as you both know, there's a lot of data available through offline channels to understand consumer intent and what they want to purchase. but you'd have to make that upfront investment before the first sale ever really occurred.
Right.
What we do on our side, because we have such a flexible warehouse management system that we built, is that ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, and relish just all sit in their cases on their own separate pallets in our warehouse. We get it up listing for sale on Amazon, and if it sells, we just pick it and pack it like any other direct to consumer order. And as we find out that it's a big seller, we go back to the brand and say, okay, here's a variation you should offer on your Shopify site because customers are really buying it, and there's really like an affinity for that packaging. And so I think at the simplest level, yes, we have our application they can embed in their
Right.
web store that allows us to like manage all their orders, continually update on a real-time basis the availability, the stock left, those sorts of things. And they have a dashboard that they can log into to see that. But on the other level is the level of consulting and expertise that comes with our people on our platform that allows brands to sort of really harvest more out of that data that's available.
Yeah. So do you support, for example, back in the early months of the pandemic, Amazon's business, like many others, just exploded. And Amazon was retaining a lot of that additional revenue through subscription programs, replenishment programs, that type thing. Do you support those types of things?
Uh, Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of our brands do subscriptions. They do subscribe and save, and we fulfill those orders, as they process. So absolutely, and I think in the early days of the pandemic, we saw a lot of as you talked about with Amazon, limiting some. Putting limits on some categories of what they could or couldn't accept and sell into Amazon. And the good thing about our service is we don't have a point of view on the best way to get something to a customer. And so we're a big user of FBA on behalf of our brands. And so a lot of our sold items get fulfilled by Amazon because it's the most efficient way, the most cost efficient way for it to get to a brand, but we're continuing to get to a customer, but we're continually working with brands on that analysis. Like, what is the right fulfillment option here? Is it better to have it come directly out of one of our warehouses, or is it directly to come out of, fulfilled by Amazon? And so I think that's a really, like, brands have a really challenging set of circumstances today. And just to Shaker, to go back to your bottle of ketchup, if you were buying that bottle of ketchup 20 years ago, we were going to the store. And both of you gentlemen know exactly how much power that retail store has in deciding what bottle of ketchup the consumer is going to buy. And
Right.
so the consumer choice was really limited. Now, if you're going to buy that same bottle of ketchup, the consumer choices have exploded. And that complexity, answering all the questions that come with how to be able to service the different channels, how to be able to respond to orders from different channels, how to be able to do direct to consumer fulfillment most efficiently from a cost perspective. All of that was shoved onto these brands that have been moving pallets for years and years. And so I think that's really at the heart of what we're trying to do is create those sales that other folks couldn't because they don't have access to the fulfillment data,
Right.
and then saving the costs that other people can't because they're not connecting both sides of the data.
No, I love it. I think I mean, I see it as a way of leveling the playing field on the brand side because I think the biggest challenge, like you said, is getting your product on the shelf when you're going to retailers. And I guess we've seen, I think, maybe the past 10, 15 years, so many little brands sprout up and disrupt the market. I mean, I think a classic case is like the Dollar Shave Club or Harry's, which started online and eventually got, I think, bought by Target, right, Gary? And I think, so I think, I mean, it's a classic case of, where do you start first? You start online, you start in store. Eventually, you want to be in both. Whether you start, and I think we've seen a lot of brands start online, but eventually make their way into a store because ultimately that's the only way to get massive scale. because as a single brand, you're constantly fighting against so many voices against other brands of similar categories. So I think a service like yours just makes so much sense for somebody who's trying to go out to the consumer.
Yeah, as I think about sort of the evolution of this space over the years, around CPG products, it was always thought that the actual fulfillment cost was a big barrier to entry, right? Go back to the bottle of ketchup example we're using here today. If that bottle of ketchup retails for, $2, $3, $4, fulfillment cost, getting that from whatever point of distribution to that shopper's home may eat up half that revenue or more. Do you see that still as a challenge, Marcus, or is it becoming less of a challenge?
Well, look, I think the the physical nature of having to transport a weighted object a distance is always going to cause that problem to exist. And so, if you look at even some of the cheapest U.S. postal rates, which are publicly available, it's high $2, $3 for that package. And so, that makes up, I don't know, 80%, 90% of the retail value of that bottle of ketchup. And that bottle of ketchup was probably too heavy to get that rate in the first place anyway.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think your principle is very true in that you do have this block around CPG for the for the lower cost objects. That being said, when you look at Amazon and how things are sold on Amazon, Amazon uh, has a unique attribute very similar to something that we have, which is I have a warehouse of things behind me, and if somebody orders an order with two different objects, I can put them in the same box, get that same box out to the consumer, and the overall effective fulfillment costs. So that box of batteries could make up for the bottle of ketchup, and ultimately you've got a really much more valuable economics. And Amazon has that very same very same opportunity, because they can put two things in one box, or basically two boxes on the same truck, which is the same cost for them, right? But if you look at how brands are really reacting, how on their own .com sites, like they're packaging, they're selling the 6-pack of ketchup, they're selling the multi-packs, they're bundling things in a way that allows for that fulfillment cost to be a lower percentage of the sale value. Like it is the largest, it is one of the largest costs outside of manufacturing, is the fulfillment in direct to consumer fulfillment. So I think that remains a challenge. I mean, your your lower priced items almost require you to sell bundles or multi packs in order to have that. But I think certainly with some of the technologies companies like ours are putting together, we're getting more efficient, but we are still going to need to have that the bundle and other types of selling strategies to make it work.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, Gary, I can almost see. I mean, if there's a wide enough infrastructure of these warehouses and these services to create a marketplace, I can see people starting their own online grocery store, just sourcing product and selling it, and having distribution partners who actually deliver and do the end fulfillment. Right? I mean, it's. I can see. I mean, I think it's very exciting because I think it opens up the space for innovation. As you have companies like Whitebox in there to kind of serve as the in between fulfillment center, you start opening up different ways of engaging customers. And I think it's very exciting because I think before, the whole grocery space is so capital intensive. For you to think of starting a grocery business, the real estate, the people, the fulfillment, the relationships, all of that has to happen. I think companies like Whitebox are kind of cutting through that and saying, "Hey, we're going to become an enabler of commerce for anybody who wants to get their product out to the customer."
How many
Very
distribution
exciting.
centers, Marcus, do you operate?
Today we have 3 distribution centers. We've got our East Coast headquarters in Baltimore. It's 350,000 square feet, just a little over that. We've got a very similar footprint out in Las Vegas for our West Coast, and then we have Memphis with 100,000 square feet. And I think Shekar, there aren't many people out there today looking to answer the questions for the brands. There are a lot of marketplaces out there looking to make lower cost items available for consumers. And so there aren't a lot of people out there like Whitebox that are focused entirely on our mission, which is to drive more sales and lower costs for these brands. And the amount of questions that a brand has to answer to go to market today are so much more than they were 20 years ago when they were selling that bottle of ketchup. And I think, if you look at where we are today, with consumers heading back into the stores, there are inherent advantages to e-commerce for a brand that they will evaporate in a store. And a great example is, we have a great customer of ours called Super Coffee. Super Coffee, they sell protein, plant-based coffees that are, three brothers founded out of college. They're athletes, and it's an amazing product. I have one every day. They have many different flavors. They have coffee pods, they have creamers, so a real assortment of products that they brought to market. Stores cannot carry, will not carry, and depending on the footprint of the stores, can't carry the entire assortment of Super Coffee. And you have to go to drinksupercoffee.com to see everything that they have available to sell. And so again, as you think about people coming back into the stores and a brand like Super Coffee that's in stores everywhere, as well as a great online seller, you've got to find a way to introduce new products to your customers. And then that provides you the data to be able to say, yes, we should go invest this in stores. And so I think that's going to be a really interesting challenge, as I think about the retail space over the next 12 months to 24 months, is as more and more brands launch and think about this assortment, as Amazon puts new rules in what you can and can't send in, how much volume, how to really create the discovery. Because if you're a snack brand and you produce a chip and a cookie, that chip and that cookie live together on your website and they live apart in a grocery store. And it would be very hard for someone who's got an affinity for your brand to discover that new product unless you're actually creating that experience and owning the data online. So I think it's a really interesting time we're going to go through here. Because so many more consumers over the past year have adopted e-commerce in a way that we haven't seen before, and are now given the choice to do what they want to do. Will they go back to the store or will they continue online? And I think we all generally know that answer, but it'll be interesting to watch it unfold.
Yeah, well, and a big part of that adoption right now, we're seeing more and more new entrants into the industry, right? That are not operating physical stores, right? They're operating ghost stores or micro fulfillment centers, pushing that distribution closer to the ultimate consumer. Leveraging speed of delivery, that type of thing. So companies like GoPuff or Fridge No More, there's a bunch of them, and more every day it seems getting into this space that are also impacting all this. What do you see happening there? What do you think those trends are? Do you have thoughts around pushing in a similar direction? Maybe smaller DCs closer to the consumer?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's one that we evaluate, as we grow and as we need to respond to the consumer demand. And so, I believe that to this point we've Amazon has trained the consumer that 2-day shipping is the right answer for a product. It's the default. If you can't get something in 2 days, it's got a Prime tag on it. It's not fast enough. Now, I'm sure we all see that sometimes Prime doesn't necessarily mean 2 days anymore. It means something different. But in general, that's the sort of default, baseline. Now, there are some products that people will want now. And you look at Instacart or other delivery services, or the ones that you're Fridge No More you're talking about. These are lifestyle changes. I need this now, and same day. As we look at our strategy around how we grow, we have to balance two things, and we have to think about how are consumers ultimately going to think about, when do I want this thing I just bought? And I think it will fall into two camps, which is, I want it now and I'm going to go to the store, or maybe I need it tomorrow for a specific thing. And everything else is like, yeah, I don't need that in 2 days. If it's 4 days, that's fine. And so I think what we have to balance for our brands is, what do their specific customers want, and when do they need their product? And so you talked earlier about subscriptions. Like, that's not, they just expect it to come every month. If it's supposed to come on the 29th of every month and it shows up on the 27th or the 30th, probably not a big deal, right? Because it's a subscription. And so I think we are both thinking about smaller, same day, next day fulfillment centers in major metropolitan areas, as well as being able to support the 2 to 7 business days of standard shipping that, quite frankly, most consumer products and most customers are okay with. So
Right.
I think it's a little bit of both. And for us as Whitebox, we have a very specific point of view on how that fulfillment choice can impact the actual purchase and the price and the offer. And so I think we're watching that very, very carefully, to understand what the right strategy is. But today, I would say, our thought is, in the future, we're probably going to need smaller distribution centers close to population centers to be able to support same next day at one point. But then we also need to have a broad low defect network that can do repeatable things over and over.
Like a spoken hub model type of thing, right? So you have a center and smaller distribution centers that are dependent on it. And I think, when you were talking previously about product discovery, and which is obviously a huge challenge for a brand who's selling across categories, and I think Gary and I have talked many times about this concept of an endless aisle, about having digital interactions at the shelf where, whether it's through AR or VR or some other technology, where you can, because the store only has limited space, but how do you discover other products that the store might want to sell online, which obviously you can have an expanded SKU list. And I think that's where I can see brands leveraging your services, where they're kind of offering this endless aisle services back to a retailer that wants to contract with them to say, hey, this is my online fulfillment partner who has all these extra brands, and this is what I'm going to carry in store, but I'm going to make it easy for the customer to have this hybrid experience of being in store, but yet ordering off of our fulfillment centers. So, I think that's where it's going, because I think people love the convenience of e-commerce, but I think there's something about social interaction and us being social beings. We like to be in the middle of people, touching, feeling things. And I think for me, when I buy online, I I think the number one reason I buy online is because I can research products before I can buy it, and the checkout process itself is really straightforward. But I think what I miss online is being able to pick up something and compare the two, right? And if I'm in the cereal aisle and there's a new cereal box that's come out, it's not always obvious in an online perspective. Whereas, you can have these visual cues in a store, to kind of. So I think there's obviously, we're going to get to a point, and that's a question I want to ask you. What do you see, with the last 18 months and whatever's transpired, what do you see some of those? What are the trends that you're seeing that you notice through your own business lens, and general your overall observation?
Yeah, so happy to talk about that. One of the things you mentioned about why people go to stores and to do that trial and comparison. Um, I think a lot about the different retailers and the different strategies that they've taken, to their marketplaces. And Target has an in-store selection, and their third-party marketplaces heavily curated. Walmart, it's a little more open for listings, but again, they want to specify specific, categories. I mean, Amazon, of course, is if you want to sell it on Amazon, as long as you don't violate Amazon's rules, go right ahead. And so I think there's this SKU selection available in store or online. When it comes to a retailer, you see retailers taking very different strategies. Um, and it used to be you would think about buying in a store. If you don't like it, it's easy to return. It doesn't cost money. But smart retailers are integrating that process. If you buy it online, you can return it in store. I mean, people are really adopting that, and I think it's helping bring consumers to their store to pick up those. Oh yeah, I probably should get this too while I'm here. Purchases, but I think the ease. You just take Amazon as an example. There's no risk to buy most things on Amazon. The return process is so easy. It costs nothing. You don't necessarily even need to box it up in most cases. You just take it to a UPS store and they scan it. And that I think has really replaced the need for, it has lowered the bar to make purchases, because now you can try that shirt on, and if it doesn't fit, you can take it back. And so I think it's a really interesting point from what you said, is like even in e-commerce, you know, we are finding a way to lower the barrier on returns, which was one of the biggest
Right.
barriers. Um, and then you combine that with, Instacart and the other delivery services. I think those two things become, again, it was accelerated when people weren't allowed to leave their house. They discovered what they could do. And so I think if you look at the last 18 months, that's probably the biggest takeaway. Um, I haven't looked much into the growth of like the food delivery services, like the Home Chefs and the Hello Freshes and stuff like that. I imagine that has been growing like crazy. But I think a lot has happened over the last year and 18 months to make people really rethink about what their shopping trips look like. And I just know from our family's perspective, and probably others, it's still, we like to go to the grocery store. It's easier to pick up the things you need walking through the grocery store than actually shopping that on e-commerce, because you
Right.
don't, that endless aisle is not very easily organized, if
Right.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's big the big takeaway of the last 18 months for me is just the ease at which you can shop online for things that you didn't think you could before.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess one more question here for you is, where do you see Whitebox going? I mean, what's the vision here? Where do you guys plan to be in 5 years from now? 2 years from now?
I think we are. So we're really focused on the mission. And our mission is to help brands sell more and save costs. We can write it in a more flowery way than that, but that ultimately is what we're trying to do. And I think as long as we stay focused on that, providing that value to brands, we'll continue to see great growth, and we'll continue to expand the services on our platform. But where I really believe we are, our vision is to really evolve commerce, evolve modern commerce for brands. Again, there's no one out there other than the brands themselves thinking about how to service all this demand in a fracturing consumer landscape where the choices are endless. And if you're a traditional brand, if you're Heinz, every day a new ketchup brand is launching that you have to compete with that didn't exist the day before. Um, and if you're an upstart brand, trying to get on that shelf next to Heinz might be super hard to do in Walmart, but you've got different ways of social and um, you know Facebook and Instagram are an amazing way to discover. There's so much data available to target, customers. And so I think this evolving modern commerce where it's driven by an endless consumer choice and different options, where brands really have to be ready to service that demand wherever it might be. That's what we want. We want to evolve modern commerce for brands. And I think 2 to 3 years from now, as long as we stay focused on that mission, um, we're probably a much larger company with many more fulfillment centers and great happy customers. And I think that the data, we haven't talked an awful lot about our data platform and the value it can provide for brands, but I really do believe that we are building a almost like an ERP system that can execute e-commerce and overall modern commerce on behalf of brands. And I think we just become uh, a very important link in the brand's go to market.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the data because you must have access to some amazing data and insights for brands to look at overall, right? In terms of movement analytics. Yeah, that's terrific. I mean, it's very exciting. I think this has been very informative for me, and I can see the space that you guys are playing in. And obviously, I think you're serving a fantastic market, bringing both the supply chain and the delivery, the fulfillment side together. You're kind of like the glue between the two in some sense, right? And I guess they've been decoupled for the longest time, but you're giving that visibility through the entire chain here. So awesome, Gary.
Yeah, no, I think this has been great. This whole area obviously continues to grow fast, but it also becomes more complex every day. The options, as you've called out, Marcus, for a brand today and how they go to market are just continuing to grow. And everything you're describing, you're almost becoming a channel that sounds like unto yourself for a small brand, a brand to consider today. I can go the physical store route and try to work through distribution in that way, or I can go to a white box and really facilitate the whole e-commerce digital world and get my product out. So no,
So,
fascinating stuff.
yeah. So, a quick question, and we'll wrap up with this. So among your customers, CPGs, do you have is the concentration more among the bigger CPGs or smaller brands? I mean, where do you see the traction happening?
Yeah. So um, we're definitely have more challenger brands that are, doing 10 to 50 million in sales that, most folks haven't heard of yet because they're still growing and launching. And so that's a majority of our business from the grocery space. We do have some very large brands, that we work with as well. And there's a commonality from both sides. Um, they're both trying to figure out this direct to consumer thing and how to navigate modern commerce. If you're a challenger brand, you're probably starting off a lot more comfortable with commerce and your Shopify site. That's where you started. That's how you're like merchandising and interacting with your customers. You've probably got a great Instagram, Facebook advertising game to understand like how to stay in touch with your customers. You're probably doing a great job with your text program and your CRM and your loyalty and all of those things because that's where you started. And
Right.
you're fighting your way into the store, but you're still trying to understand how to be more direct to consumer. And if you're a bigger brand, you may not have a website where you actually sell your own things because you don't want to disrupt your major customers. And so I think they're both trying to be more direct to consumer and understand what's going on in modern commerce, and that's the commonality. But if you look at our customer base today, it's definitely more of the challenger brands that are in that 10 to $50 million plus annual sales that are omni-channel and need the support of someone who brings a tool set like us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Neat.
No, fascinating, fascinating. I mean, I would love to keep in touch with you guys and get you back on here. As we come out of this pandemic, and it's been a Great conversation. We talk on the show to retailers, we've spoken to industry analysts, to startups, and I think that you're probably the first guest that we're talking to who's in the fulfillment space, right, Gary? I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we have a couple of guests coming up who just have delivery fulfillment software platforms that they're building. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to speaking to Marcus again. I know as we come out of this pandemic, I'm curious to see, what habits stay with customers and which industry gets fueled. And I think, what I love about what you're doing is that you're giving the ability to the small guys to compete and distribute and access to data and analytics, which they normally would simply not have access to, which is terrific. So I want to wish you guys all the very, very best. I'm sure you guys are going to grow like gangbusters here. And thank you again for being on the show. Do you have anything to add that maybe our listeners can take away in terms of if there are brands out there listening and they want to get in touch with Whitebox? What's the process here?
Sure. www.whitebox.com. Very easy to find us. Learn more about our services, as well as put in a request for contact. We're happy to happy to engage. And I just want to thank you both for having me on the program. It's actually been a lot of fun to kind of talk through a lot of these things in questions I don't normally get every day. So I just appreciate the time, and thank you very much.
And no, it's been a lot of fun. And please do have somebody send over your address. We'll get you the Retail Perch coffee mug. And we want to make sure that next time you're on the show, we're all having coffee together here. So, right, exactly. So
Perfect.
listen, hey, it's been fantastic. I've enjoyed the conversation. And like I said, time flies here on the Retail Perch. That's not fun, but Gary, any closing thoughts before we
Marcus,
end the show?
thanks for being with us today. I think this was a great discussion and gives all our listeners a little different perspective on a different part of this big industry. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And as always, this has been another fun Retail Perch episode. I want to thank the listeners again for supporting us, listening to us week after week, and as we bring some amazing guests here on the show. And I also want to thank Stephanie Doherty for putting this together. She's really the producer of our podcast and manages all the little details that make this happen. And again, you guys stay safe, get vaccinated. Let's go out and live life again. So with that, we're over and out here at the Retail Perch.
Make sure to join us every Monday and connect with us at the Retail Perch on Instagram and Facebook.
And if you have any questions, feel free to email us at theretailperch@birdseye.com.
Until next time, this is Shekar.
And this is Gary, signing off.